And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. My name is Steve Deace. His name is Todd Erzin. His name is Aaron McIntyre. We are brought to you by Equipping the Persecuted. Every day, 17 Christians are murdered for their faith by Islamic terrorists in Nigeria. Your $35 monthly donation can save lives. Visit equippingthepersecuted.org to join the cause. Act now. Donate today at equippingthepersecuted.org. Again, that's equippingthepersecuted.org. We've got a fun Wednesday lined up for you with Buy, Sell, or Hold. That'll get started here at the bottom of the hour. The weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will rejoin us. We'll get his take on the RFK confirmation hearings that are now underway in the United States Senate. And you know he's got a thing or two to say about what the Florida legislature is attempting to pull yesterday that we talked about, or pull as we speak, that we talked about on yesterday's show. So we'll get to all that and more. But first, we must get to Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Mystery Solved. Yesterday, during her first press conference as White House Press Secretary, Karoline Leavitt provided an update on what those mysterious drones over New Jersey were.
After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy.
On the topic of deportations, Leavitt didn't get tripped up by a stupid question.
Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws, and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes.
Moving on, the confirmation hearing for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services Secretary is going down as we speak. Here's how things started off.
News reports have claimed that I'm anti-vaccine or anti-industry. I am neither. I am pro-safety. In my advocacy, I've often disturbed the status quo by asking uncomfortable questions. Well, I'm not going to apologize for that. We have massive health problems in this country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that he would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children.
President Trump added to the flurry of executive orders Tuesday, issuing restrictions on meatball surgery and chemical castration for minors. In a post on Truth Social, Donald Trump said, quote, "Today it was my great honor to sign an executive order banning the chemical castration and medical mutilation," those are his words, "of innocent children in the United States of America. Our nation will no longer fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support so-called gender-affirming care." The White House issued a memo Tuesday offering buyouts to millions of federal workers in an effort to expedite the downsizing process and to ultimately save American taxpayers oodles of cash. The U.S. Office of Personnel Management revealed on Tuesday in a post titled "Fork in the Road" that an email was sent to all eligible full-time federal employees, millions of them, presenting them with a choice. They could either remain in their current positions, meeting enhanced standards of conduct and working in their physical offices 5 days a week without any certainty of their position or agency, or they could alternatively opt out for a dignified, fair departure of the federal government, utilizing a deferred resignation program, a buyout for about 7 months' worth of pay. Those federal workers have to make their choice by next week.
Slash it. Slash it.
Wall Street Journal confirmed it was Republican Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina who was behind the last-minute smear job on now Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Tillis allegedly assured Hegseth's former sister-in-law her testimony could convince GOP senators to vote no on Hegseth. That, as we know, did not work, but we do now know, or at least have further confirmation, that Thom Tillis is a snake. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis is promising to veto a watered-down immigration bill that passed through the state's legislature. The bill passed through the Senate, notably without a veto-proof majority. And finally, we go back to the White House. Here's Karoline Leavitt again on what the Trump administration discovered the Biden administration was trying to do with $50 million on their way out the door.
DOJ and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money.
Condoms for Gaza. Sounds like the name of a ska band, and that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. You want to live a better quality of life here in the new year. Relief Factor might be the key to unlocking that desire. If you're struggling with chronic pain, that means too much achiness, stiffness, soreness, that just kind of lingers. That's usually because you've got too much inflammation in your joints. And that's where Relief Factor comes in, created by physicians who can prescribe drugs, but they didn't think the market needed another painkiller. What we needed was something that would go after, that was drug-free, and would go after the inflammation that is causing likely your chronic pain. Now, this is no guarantee. It's not a magic potion, but over the years, about 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start at Relief Factor. 70% of them saw such great results in the first 3 weeks or less. They ended up staying with the program and the product long term. So what do you got to lose? Why not see if you don't see a difference in your pain threshold in 3 weeks or less? If you try the 3-week quick start at relieffactor.com, it's just $20. That's all it costs to find out if you can get those kind of results. $19.95. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, or you can call them at 800-4-RELIEF. I want to discuss RFK's bid here to become HHS secretary and why I've been saying since he was nominated that his nomination in and of itself basically paid off my Trump vote, in my opinion. And I think he's got an opportunity to be among the most impactful secretary cabinet appointments in recent memory. If you stop and think about who are cabinet secretaries that the average person knew, like a Henry Kissinger when you and I were growing up, okay? And he was out of office by the time you and I are really growing up, but that was still a household name to most Americans, right? He has the potential, for better or for worse, you could people have a lot of their own thoughts on the right and left about what made Henry Kissinger a household name, but you cannot deny that he was one, right? And the same can be true here of RFK Jr. And there are things I fundamentally disagree with RFK Jr. about. I will tell you that I spent an entire day with him in January of 2023, and I found him to be one of the most impressive men of his generation that I have met. I didn't say perfect. I didn't say holy. Impressive. Self-aware, humble about his weaknesses and his failures, committed to a cause that he has been willing to sacrifice for, and has demonstrated a high amount of sacrifice on behalf, way more than almost any of us can say we have devoted it to anything in our lives. I mean, he has been excommunicated from the closest thing that America's ever had to a royal family, the Kennedy family. How much money, prestige, significance, relationships has his convictions on matters of public health? How much does it cost him? And then look around at a lot of the people we vote for, and then look at our own selves and ask how much have we been able to risk by comparison? And it's going to be a very small amount. So why do we need somebody like him? And why do I think we are desperate to have somebody like him as head of HHS? I want to lay out, in the end, on this show, we're going to go back to two things over and over again. The scriptures and the data. Over and over and over again. All right. So the scriptures are going to quantify for us what is good, true, and beautiful. The data is going to quantify for us what is reality. It is the confirmation of what's good and true and beautiful, or the lack thereof, based on what the data actually says. I have gone from I don't really care, but in general, I'm skeptical that we have to do all these shots, to I care, and I'm now just entirely skeptical. I'm not particularly dogmatic on either side. I'm not even really dogmatic on things like Ozempic, and let me tell you why. Because I've been morbidly obese. And so I'm well aware of all the maladies that go along with morbid obesity. It's a risk-reward ratio. There are risks taking Ozempic and what you are doing to alter your physiology in order to lose weight. You get to make the decision, know the data, and make the decision if you think the risks of what getting out of the category of morbid obesity for you would be worthy or not of the risk inherent of what it will take in order to use that as a regimen. You make that call. You make that decision. I don't get in on fad diets. Lots of my friends are doing carnivore. I think we're uniquely and wonderfully made, fearfully and wonderfully made, in fact. I think there are absolutes when it comes to meta laws of the universe from our creator, but how those things apply to individuals, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. I don't think we're constructs, algorithms. We're human beings with souls. And so, for example, my body cannot do carnivore. I cannot digest that amount of fat. I'm in the bathroom multiple times a day. Kind of can't do a live program with a non-regular dietary tract, fair. Kind of hard to do this, from the men's corner stall. All right, so it just doesn't work for me. I'm glad that has worked. That has worked for so many people I know. Great. I think there can be multiple approaches to things, but I think what there has to be is transparency and accountability. I have taken several vaccines over the course of my life. I've refused several others. We gave our kids some vaccines, refused many others. In the last 10 years, I have, since I had all my boosters updated to do a mission trip to Haiti in 2014, in the last 10 years, I have taken only one vaccine since then and refused all others. That's based on my research and what I think and what my instincts say. And since this is the body the Lord gave me, I am the steward of it, and I'm accountable to him for it with what I do. You should have the information at your readiness to make those exact same decisions for yourself. Because in the end, you will not stand before me or Todd or Aaron or your family members or the head of HHS or NIH. You won't stand before any of those to give an account for what you did with that which was given to you, but only to a holy and righteous God, and his name is Jesus Christ. So that's the biblical worldview position on this, but what's the data say? Let me give you some data. From 1900 to 1985, life expectancy in America, I want to make sure I get this right, improved a whopping 54%. An incredible leap. Now, what transpired at the turn of the 20th century to almost the end of the 20th century? Well, you can point to three specific things. In no uncertain order, sanitation improved. We're putting running water and indoor plumbing in people's homes. That wasn't a given anywhere in human society up until the 20th century of this era. In fact, in the previous century, the 19th century, there was a guy named Semmelweis who came forward and said, I want to find out why childbirth is the number one killer of women going back to antiquity. Kind of seems counterproductive to keeping the species going, that this is the number one killer of women. And so he started doing this crazy thing. Before he started putting his hands inside the most intimate aspects of women's bodies to help them deliver their children and to monitor their pregnancies, he started washing his hands so they'd be clean. And he started noticing, well, the mortality rate amongst pregnancies in my clinic have gone way down. So you would have thought the test of science people would have been ecstatic to learn that with just a little soap and water, pretty inexpensive solution, a massive amount of human progress could be made when it comes to procreating the species. No, in fact, they forcefully admitted him to a sanitarium and ended up essentially getting mentally tortured and died there. That's what happened to him. So we're not far off from lobotomies being advertised, okay? So the 20th century, we take a major leap. What happens? Sanitation improves. Running water and plumbing become standard in every first world person's home. That means a lot less bacteria, a lot less infection, a lot less disease. What caused the greatest plague we know of, the bubonic plague? Rat droppings. They had no means by which to, get around all the bacteria and disease being spread by rat poop. That's number one. Electricity would be another one. We've got electricity and gas going into homes now, so we have heating and cooling going on. There's less heat stroke of the elderly in the summertime. There is less frigid conditions of people in general in the winter. which matters quite a bit in the early 20th century because the Rust Belt was the population explosion of that era, like the Sun Belt is now. We've got the assembly line coming in from Henry Ford. The Rust Belt was the place of, in the first 50 years of the 20th century, where the massive amount of urbanization and urban sprawl was located. And then third, the advent of antibiotics. Now, we're going to sit here and have lots of debates. Which of those three things gets how much credit and which amount of ratio? But they all three are timed during this era. We had vaccines longer than we've had antibiotics. We had vaccines longer than we've had indoor plumbing. And we've had vaccines longer than we've had electricity and gas. Vaccines actually go back in their crudest forms to the late 18th century. So these three things, availability of antibiotics, electricity, gas, and indoor plumbing and sanitation becoming standard in communities and homes across the first world. During this period of time, from 1980 to 1985, life expectancy in the United States goes up 54%. From roughly 46 years is the life expectancy in America in 1946. Todd, how old are you?
I'm 52.
Yeah, I'm going to be 52. 46 is the life expectancy in America in 1900. In 1985, it's 74. About 54%. Now, why am I cutting it off at 1985? Because 1986 is when the law is passed granting vaccine manufacturers liability shields for their medical interventions, right? 1986.
Yeah, Republican president.
Yeah, it was Ronald Reagan that signed that into law, correct. So 1986 seems like a good place because we've had an explosion of shot recommendations from public health officials since 1986. Is it because the liability shields are removed and so they can be more cavalier, or were the liability shields removed so they can be more innovating? Again, we can argue about that, and people on different sides of how they're going to see that paradigm are going to have different takes on what that means. But I do think we can all agree 86 is a good year to have as a metric benchmark because that was a paradigm shift. And there's no doubt the amount of medical innovations, particularly vaccine technologies, that have been made available from 1986 until the year 2024 exceed in total the entirety of vaccination technology that was manifested from its beginnings in the late 18th century until 1985. That's not even in dispute. So I think 86 is a good year as kind of now, all right, we turn the page and we've had a paradigm shift now, okay? If you look at the amount of, I know we've talked about the childhood vaccination schedule. Let's look at the in utero vaccination schedule. Now, if you've not been a parent for a while, you're like, wait a minute, we're doing vaccines to babies in the womb? Yes. I don't know when this began. I looked it up. There's varying, reports. What I can tell you is the NIH under Francis Collins aggressively promoted this. The idea that a mother could pass. Now, keep in mind, often pregnant women are exempted from whatever human trials they actually do for these vaccines. But under Francis Collins, this was aggressively messaged that you could a mom could transfer the benefits, the antibodies, other benefits of these injections in utero onto her child. So in 1985, there were roughly 5 of these that CDC recommended could benefit a pregnant mom to take and would transfer some medical benefit onto her baby in utero. In 2024, that number became 32. 32. That is over a 500% increase since 1986. Over a 500% increase. So let's look at the risk-reward ratio. Fair? Let's see what the benefit of this is. Because they're not recommending that, hey, if you're a redheaded mom with this white blood cell count, these are epidemiological, constructs comprehensively. Like everyone should take these. Okay? Okay, then let's look at the math. If we're going to deliver these innovations in the macro, then we should analyze them, therefore, in the macro, correct?
Yes.
I'm only using the premise that the biomedical security state is asserting. We're not people, we're constructs, we're file numbers. Okay, cool. All right. If that's the paradigm, then let's go with it then. Since 1986, life expectancy in America has increased about 5.1%, from just over 74 years of age to just under 78. So just over 5% life expectancy. So there's another angle. I'll just say it before Todd does, because we'll get off on this rabbit trail. So it is fascinating that we had a 54% leap from 1980 to 1985, and yet since we unleashed the full power of medical innovation via vaccine technology, in the next, what's 86 to now would be 24, another 48 years, right? In the next 48 years, we've only seen a 5% increase in life expectancy. So, yes. For people that are dogmatic about this on Todd's side, that is a very interesting point to make. How come life expectancy rate of growth actually has slowed down since we started mass injecting these things? I thought it would work the other way. Shouldn't it?
Not to mention that what is the quality of life in that extra life you're getting there?
That's the point now I want to get to. Essentially, if we're going to look at this, just look at the math. Everybody put on your actuarial hat. And here's why. We always have to look at medical treatments as a risk reward, folks. Here's why. Because whether or not you believe vaccines are magical potions, or if I dip my copper bracelet in this raw honey from a local bee nest and hive in my area code enough, my tumor will disappear. Whatever one of these camps you're in, guess what the death rate is? Aaron, do you remember what it is?
Pretty high.
It's 100%. Yeah. Regardless if you're really looking for the grapes and the grape nuts and injecting them right into your veins, and you think the one thing Kim Jong-un is right is tree bark is a delicacy, or you're taking so many shots right now that in another era we'd call you a junkie. Whichever it is, guess what the death rate is? It's 100%. So all we're really talking about here is staving off an inevitability. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about staving off an inevitability. We're all going to die. So then, therefore, since it's inevitable, since the outcome none of us want is inevitable and we cannot avoid it, we are left then only with a risk-reward ratio. Make sense? How long can I stave it off? What's the quality of life if I stave it off? If you just looked at this in terms of mass population health data, that dog don't hunt. That math doesn't work. A 500 some odd % increase in injections during the same period of time, there's been a 5% increase in life expectancy. And we're talking about the tail end of the last few years of life, when frankly, most of the time it's enjoyed the least. Are you far more likely to spend your day alone in a nursing home at 77 or 47, right? Okay. Are you riding roller coasters at 77? And I know every 77 that's rode it's going to email me, because for some reason you guys take everything personally and don't. It's like got a note from a nurse. I can't believe you attacked our profession by making about the TikTok. I'm like, were you the one making TikToks? Then why do you care? Do you know why people are like this? Other than just idolatry, and I get my identity wrapped up in. I'm like, I didn't say your name. I have no idea what kind of nurse you were. All right. So I know every 77-year-old in this audience who's spry as a spring chicken is going to email me. But by and large, is life more enjoyable at 77 or 47 or 57? Is it healthier at 77, 47, or 57? By and large, we all know the answer. So don't be a smartass. So basically, I'm adding 3.5 years of life on the tail end in order that at the very beginning, when I'm the less tainted by a sinful world in my mother. Now, I'm still tainted. I've got a soul. I'm born of a woman. But I'm less impacted externally by all the aspects of a fall. Because we were made not to die, by the way. So the minute I come into this world, the taint of sin is upon me. And other people's sin is upon me. So at the closest to holiness state as a human I can have in my mother's womb, we're going to inject you 32 times so that the tail end of life, when it's the harshest and the hardest and the most debilitating for most people, you have another 3.5 years of that. Who would invest in that in the right mind?
Colts.
If it was looked at like that? Colts would. No one else would. In their right mind, you wouldn't look at it like that. And by the way, I'm taking for granted that all 32 shots work and aren't negative efficacy in and of themselves, which of course we all know that's not true. We would like to look at them individually, but they won't let us unless we sue them. And in many cases, these shots are so new, they wouldn't have the data anyway. So congratulations, you and your baby are the ongoing human experimental trial. Good luck. And if it goes wrong, of course, since 1986, what can you do about it? Not a damn thing is the answer. And we wonder, man, how come our parents and grandkids, our grandparents and grandparents and their great-grandparents and great-grandparents, they ate bread for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and now everybody's got a gluten intolerance. My goodness. I mean, when we were kids growing up, Todd, we literally snorted peanut butter. Now we can't have it anywhere, we can't have it in a children's ministry in America. We need answers on this.
Is the obesity epidemic worse now or then?
It's not even close.
Yes.
It's not even close. We need answers on this. We need to have answers on this. And it's very clear the system as we've had it all for decades isn't going to give us these answers. I am 100% confident, given this oversight authority, RFK Jr. is going to get us some answers, which is exactly why they don't want him to have it. They don't want you to have the answers. But we have to have answers. We're doing something wrong. We're getting injected way more than we were a generation ago, and we're living roughly the same amount of time as we were a generation ago.
We should be flying by now based on the amount of chemicals they're putting into us.
I think we need to have the answers to these questions. Where did all these food allergies and everything else, where did they all come from? It used to be a stigma to have to use a public toilet because you couldn't hold your bowels. Now it's just part of a lot of Americans' daily conditions. It was for me 100 pounds ago, so I know what it's like. We need answers to these questions. And this is every bit, in my view, a pro-life issue, as it is not murdering our children before they're born. Well, not slowly murdering them after they're born is a pro-life issue too. No one would risk something for 500. No one would, in no other entity, the financial sector, job sector, relational sector, nowhere else would a human being in their right mind accrue 500% more risk and liability for max 5% gain. No one would do that. And if you are any form of a trader and in any asset or commodities market and you present it to your client, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to invest 500% more for about a 5% ROI. They'd laugh at you and fire you. So why are we doing this with our own bodies?
Cult.
We need the answer to this. Or at least start asking questions of the people who are supposed to give us those answers. And that's every bit the pro-life issue as shutting down Planned Parenthood.
You're here.
And then ask yourselves, what are the benign, innocent reasons they wouldn't want us to have these answers? What are those? I'll answer that one for you. There aren't any. Not a single one. There's only two options you're left with here. The people doing this to us are so cravenly deceitful that they're willing to treat us as experiments just for nothing more than money, or they're so deceived themselves by their denial that we are all fearfully, wonderfully made in the likeness and image of a loving God, that their utilitarian worldview is wreaking havoc. Either way, the results are the same. Want to hear some great news? The abortion pill reversal treatment, which provides women with a second opportunity to choose life, is bringing babies back to life. And when you join forces with Preborn Ministry, you can empower women to reverse that course as well. See, what you might not be aware of since Roe was overturned is that, yes, baby killing's been restricted in a good many states. Planned Parenthoods are closed, or most of them are closed in a good many states as well. But now, about 60% of women who are killing their babies are doing so mail order. They're just getting a miscarriage and a pill, and thus turning a lot of the nation's mailboxes now into abortuaries. So this is why you want to start the new year off by supporting life and our friends over at Preborn. You know, one ultrasound is just $28, and that may convict a mom not to kill her kid and save both the mom and her baby. For $140, maybe you can rescue 5 babies. Whatever you can give, it's tax deductible. It'll be appreciated. We have appreciated how generous y'all here at The Blaze have been since we started this partnership with Preborn a few years ago. We've saved tens of thousands of babies. Let's save even more. Dial pound 250, say the keyword baby to donate securely on your mobile phone there. And you can go to preborn.com/Steve. They've got 100% charity rating, so you can give with confidence at preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. I said a mouthful there, and I would be remiss before we got to buy, sell, or hold if I did not allow Todd and Aaron an opportunity to respond. Of course, Todd does have a dogmatic view of this, which it's not been a good last few years for his skeptics. That's for sure. Aaron is in a fascinating situation where he and his wife both grew up homeschooled, and homeschoolers have a tendency to be, just by and large, fairly skeptical of Big Pharma as an entity. But then your wife, of course, was a nurse in the conventional health system as well. You know, so you guys have very unique viewpoints on everything that I just said. So let's hear them. What do you think?
Well, just to briefly reset, I have my unique viewpoint. I'm vaccinated conventionally, but for Steve and I, back in the day, that was roughly a total cocktail of about 17 vaccines and boosters. Now that's number is over 70. But then I met this gal named Jill. She and her 2 siblings were never vaccinated for anything, and my 4 children are not vaccinated for anything. And Steve's intro was outstanding. And the thing about that whole 1986 decision, it wasn't done because there were just this onslaught of frivolous lawsuits that were about to bring the whole thing crumbling down. No, the simple fact of the matter is this. And not only with vaccination, with natural childbirth, all 4 of my children were born at home. The modern psychosis, emotional psychosis around mothers, a lot of them who came to me asking about all these things, who worked at the Des Moines Register with me back in the day when they were about to have their first children. They had all kinds of questions, but they were all so consumed by worry. Some understandable. Listen, motherhood, especially the first time, I get it. But how much of fear, drip, 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 year after year after year drives out everything. And therefore, they just do. This is what I mean by the magical power of vaccines. Doctors will tell you when you are afraid anything, and you will believe them because you want that fear to go away. That's ultimately what this is all about. And if you lose just 1 or 2 of those lawsuits and reverse the paradigm, and the magic that heals everything is suddenly now poisoning my babies, that's why this happened in 1986. And if you just pause for 1 second and think about this as an adult who understand how things operate in the real world psychologically and emotionally with the own children you've raised, you know that what I'm talking about is true. Secondly, I'm so glad those protesters interrupted this thing, because I thought about he's just a kook. Well, give him the microphone. Let him start speaking then. No. You know he's bringing the good, the true, and the beautiful. You're terrified of it. You've formed a cult around this poison. And if I may, Aaron introduced me to... Listen, I'm used to... for a long time... People say I suck about a lot of things. So once I entered this world with vaccination, it was just another day that ends in Y. But when Aaron and I started working with each other, way before COVID, and this is before he met Bella, and every once in a while I would get online and I'd talk about the COVID things, and he commented one day, "My God, they hate you." I said, "Yeah. This is a window into the cultish behavior of those who have formed a religion around this."
Yeah, I remember that instance. I don't remember the individual, but it was a woman, and she was a writer for like the Washington Times or the Federalist or something, and she called you a monster.
Yeah.
She called you a monster for being skeptical or against vaccines. And it wasn't even that in-depth of a conversation. She called you a monster. And I've always maintained, and that was the moment that crystallized it for me, into perpetuity, that if you can't look me in the eye and guarantee with 100% certainty that whatever you're giving me, whether it's a therapeutic, whether it's some sort of drug, whatever you're giving me is 100% not going to hurt me, there needs to be some level of grace. Because nothing in this life is 100% guarantee. So there at least needs to be some level of grace. Certainly it doesn't rise to the level of calling somebody a monster for asking questions about it. Number two, I've seen, I'll just say his name. Love him. He's been a great guest on this show. Have a tremendous deal of respect for his intellect. But I saw David Harsanyi, also at the Federalist, used to be National Review. I think he's back at the Federalist. He published a Twitter thread or X thread the other day, itemizing all of the things that RFK Jr., he kind of deems him as kooky on. And I'm like, my brother, that's more of an argument to actually confirm him so you can get rid of his kookiness, win the argument against his kookiness, if you think he's a real kook, once and for all, so that this argument can be put to bed from your point of view once and for all. Thirdly, everything that you said in that segment was absolutely pertinent. The right questions to ask, especially what you said towards the end there. Going back to 1986, our life's expectancy is roughly the same, right?
5% increase.
5% increase.
Yeah.
5% increase, but exponentially more things that we're told to give our children.
500%.
500%.
That's in utero. That's not even the childhood schedule Todd's talking about. Just in utero.
Is the juice worth the squeeze? Can we not even ask that question? RFK Jr. this morning tried to ask this. It's settled science. It's settled science. It's not compelling. The burden of proof is on you. Just asking questions, again, is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know why we have to come to this fork in the road, but here's the crux of the matter. I've reset this multiple times in COVID, and I think it's apropos here. And I think it's appropriate with the theme of our show this year, Worldview is Destiny. Academia for generations, at least a couple of generations now, has been completely trying to secularize itself. And as you pointed out, there's no such thing as a truly secular endeavor. Somebody is going to rule. Someone will be worshipped. But they've tried to divorce themselves from the laws of nature and nature's God. What does that mean? What is the downstream impact of that? That means that you fundamentally do not view human beings as being fearfully and wonderfully made. Mm-hmm. When you're starting with that as the premise, when you're starting from the premise that we are just biological things that are just doing stuff and things are happening to them, and we're not fearfully and wonderfully made by our Maker, that the downstream impact of thinking like that means that you get to play God.
Yes.
You think that you can achieve utopia through science. You think that every single sniffle can be avoided because you're starting from a flawed premise. That these bodies, yes, we are mired by the stain and impact and curse of sin. That's what sickness is. It's an outcropping of sin, whether it's avoidable or not, sickness. But you don't see, you're not starting from that premise, that our bodies were also made in a way that we can heal, that we don't need to, that sometimes sickness is a good thing. Again, you're starting from flawed premises with this, and that needs to be recaptured. And ultimately, RFK Jr. is barking up, I think, a lot of the right trees and maybe all the right trees when it comes to public health. That's a good thing. But if our thinking about our bodies, or if our thinking about our health is not turned away from the attempt to secularize medicine, then we're still going to fall for the same bananas in the tailpipes over and over again into perpetuity. This is fundamentally what I'm trying to say, a spiritual issue as much as anything else.
You nailed it. And that's why we say worldview is destiny. Once we begin with the premise, there isn't a God, and therefore we're not created in his image, we have conjured a new reality.
And it's chilling to consider how many Christians at the very beginning of life treat it just like the pagans do.
Yes.
That's your point.
Yes.
And I want to add this as well. What's something that's fascinating, and my wife is shameless plug, is she's working on some curriculum for mothers who are pregnant, going through child bearing, and then early motherhood, early life, and so she's helped dozens of new moms with their pregnancies.
My own daughter, for example.
Exactly. Dozens of new moms with their pregnancies and the early part of, infancy and the newborn stages. And even some of her friends who are very left-wing that she's helped, there's always a moment in pregnancy, always, without fail, even some of the most propagandized, always a moment where they're like, hey, I'm thinking about vaccines again for a second time. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like they were created with some instincts within them to question about, hey, maybe what I've been told, maybe I should rethink that. Now, they don't always follow through with some of Bella's advice. And it's not always, and Bella's not saying, oh, no, vaccines all the time. It's just, here's some resources you can keep asking some of these questions. But I think that's very interesting along those lines.
Let's test that there's no such thing as the secular for a second, since I've said that a lot already this year. All right, let's test that. If there was such a thing as a secular, and if medicine minus God, and the reality that comes from acknowledging he's the ultimate reality, if medicine modern medicine had truly concocted a secular realm. So a place of, let's define secular, a place of religious neutrality, or maybe irreligious place where just nothing other than hardcore technocratic data and utilitarian, ethics reign. Okay. If that were the case, then you would hear more often things like what I just said. All right, guys, we've done this for almost 50 years, since 86. We've had a 5.1% increase in life expectancy, and we're taking 500% more risk with these injections. That ratio is not good. That ratio's upside down, inverted, and the math does not add up, and we got to reconsider our processes. That is what a secular realm would say if it could exist. But since it cannot exist, and it is not possible for it to exist, and so instead, we're just going to reject that we're fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of the God of the Bible and create a new God. We're not even going to look at that data. We're not even going to know it. And we don't want other people to know it either, lest they practice a creed or a dogma opposite of our own. There is no such thing as the secular. If we were just doing irreligious science, If we were just doing what Neil deGrasse Tyson claims is his worldview, we would look at the math and say, like I said a few minutes ago, in no other sector. I'm going to go to the Blaze. It's our contract year. Hey, guys, I'm going to need you guys to pay us 500% more in exchange that you're going to make 5% more profit off our show than you did the last few years. Think they're taking that deal? No. And no one's taken that deal anywhere else. Anywhere else. If it was purely secular, that's what the science would tell you. Well, we got 50 years of data on this now, and we have grown the life expectancy 5.1% for 500% more inherent risk with experimental innovative injections. And that's just at one stage of life. That's why there's no secular.
Yeah. Instead, we have the reality, Steve, and to your great credit, you said the first time I said this, it sounded kind of nuts, but then you thought about it more. This is exactly why, if you confronted most people, most young mothers, Christian mothers, with the decision, are you going to baptize your baby or are you going to vaccinate them? Almost all of them would choose vaccination because of what Steve is talking about. Everything is theology. Everything.
You only take on this amount of inverted risk over religious conviction. You only say, I'm gonna jump in onto the floor of the Coliseum and run out there and take on the lions and tigers, and be Roman sport and their lunch for religious conviction. If there was such a thing as a secular realm, you would look at the math I just laid out for you and you'd say, that's dumb. I'm not doing that. And no other place would I accrue that level of added on risk for so little ROI. I wouldn't do it. So why do it here? Because there isn't a secular realm. You're doing it for a religious conviction. Let's just all be honest about that. That's the first thing that we have to be honest about. This is a religious conviction. We can't simply look at the data. We saw this during COVID. I thought people were going to be relieved. Hey, you don't have to wear their masks. They don't work. Don't you dare take that away from me. How dare you?
Still to this day.
Yeah. Still see people wearing masks in airports. Still. The extremely left-wing used bookstore here in town, every time we go in there, there's still 3 or 4 people working there still wearing masks. And I've gone from being upset at those people to now I just want to go and give them a big hug. And I want to set the captives free because I now recognize it's a they've fallen into a cult. It's a religious conviction. They're spiritually lost. They've wrapped their identity in it. Because someone will always rule and something will always be worshipped. If we were just doing science and if we were just looking at the data, we would say, to use Aaron's phrase, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. The back end benefit of this is too minuscule and at a stage of life that most Americans aren't looking forward to anyway, in exchange for a lot of accrued inherent risk on the front end of life amongst the most innocent we have. No one would agree to that unless it were a religion. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erz, and I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve at stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And then also, please make sure to subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. Let's get that off the floor and going because the old one just got destroyed by censorship.
We are almost to 10,000 subscribers. So if you are the 10,000th, I'm making this announcement today. If you are the 10,000th subscriber to at Deace Show, right? I should know this.
Yep, at Deace Show on YouTube. Yep.
You will win probably nothing, but you will be the 10,000th subscriber. So go over there and subscribe.
It is the ultimate Steve Deace Show thing to have a contest with no prizes.
Yep.
That's just as good as it gets right there. All right.
Our admiration. That's your prize.
That's exactly right. And our gratitude we'll probably never express. Yes. But just to give you guys an idea of what the censorship looks like, we are now most days with just about 10,000 subscribers on that new YouTube channel, pulling in more views now than we were on the other channel that had over 50,000 subscribers on it. So that's just one little quantification of what that big tech censorship can look like. So please subscribe to that new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. And then if you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. If you love the podcast, thank you. For those of you that did that already, hit subscribe or on iTunes follow, and that'll make sure every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your feed here every single time. And also don't forget about our friends over at Angel Studios, their brand new film, Brave the Dark, a powerful film that'll leave you uplifted and inspired as the faith of one teacher prompts him to get involved in the life of one of his students, Nate Williams, who was the witness and victim of a horrific tragedy as a little boy, and the amount of darkness that's been on him ever since he just cannot get himself out of. So he needs help. He needs a mentor. He needs a father figure. Enter Mr. Dean, who bails him out of jail, takes him in, and the redemption arc begins. It's a very well-acted film. It's in theaters now. If you want to get your tickets today, if you're looking for something uplifting and redemptive, Angel Studios usually can bring it to you. And their latest one, get tickets today for Brave the Dark when you go to angel.com/Steve. Angel.com/Steve. Again, angel.com/Steve. Let's get to it. Bottom of the hour, it'll be time for Daniel Horowitz, but right now it is time for Buy, Sell, or Hold. We will get through as many of your submissions as we possibly can. And then what remains, we'll get to in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. No topic is off limits. Aaron has selected the submissions from you that he is going to suggest to you and me, Todd. You and I can buy it. We can sell it. If at any point in time, however, you utilize a hold, then because of your self-emasculation, you will then have to go to Lindsey Graham and find out what he would require of you to resign his Senate seat and promise never to run for office again. What indecent proposal must you consummate? All right. What carnal pleasure must you indulge in order for the rest of us to be pleased by never seeing his grill in the U.S. Senate ever again?
That one's dark. A couple weeks ago, I said, you gave me an alternative I'd take in a heartbeat. No, this one, you're back in a very dark place now.
Thank you. It's a tough call. I mean, how much indignity would I personally suffer for? I mean, you like suffering. I mean, as a good Catholic, this is the moral math right here. I mean, how much of an indignity am I willing to suffer at the hands of Lindsey Graham in order to arrest him, arrest the United States from his Grindr account hands, right? That's a tough call. Because this would be what we used to call taking one for the team. Amen?
Could it get worse? Amen? Yeah, it can get worse.
Amen. Oh, that's good. All right, Aaron, let's get to it. Can it get worse? Amen.
All right, going to start with somebody named Anastasia Hibbs, who says Steve would rather have a rat infestation in the studio than admit that he's becoming an old man who has to use his phone flashlight to read the menu in restaurants.
Oh, Sal. He'd admit that in a second.
Yes, I would admit that. In fact, sweetie, I was doing that when you were little. All right, I could not see the menu at most of the steakhouses, these dimly lit steakhouses in Iowa, when you were a little girl. Yes.
This is, if I won't eat if I don't have these at the restaurant. It can be well lit now. I'm like,
yes.
What is that? What is that appetizer? No, I'm a total old man.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is each of the kids has their niche with the old man. All right, so if you want something, if you want Dad to give you something, have Zoe ask. All right. Anna's niche is because she's the chip off the old block. All right. She gets away with busting Daddy's, what, more than all the other kids do.
That's why you're my favorite, Anna.
What's Noah's special power?
Noah's special power is he's my buddy, and we just hang out and we talk dude stuff and writing and story development and characters. So he has he's the last one in the home, so he gets all the attention right now. That's kind of his niche at the moment. So Anna, I expect better material out of you, Princess, because I have been I have needed to grab the candle to see the menu at Johnny's Italian Steakhouse since you were a little girl, not just now. All right. But she's trying to come up with ways to bust me for being old. Like her and Zoe called me yesterday on FaceTime just to bust on me. All right. And I had the phone backwards, and they're like, "What are you, 70? You know how to operate FaceTime in the phone?" Actually, no, I didn't realize I had the phone backwards. So this is their thing to make fun of me for being old, particularly Anna's thing.
We all get old.
Yes.
Being highly erratic about all manner of things. That's different. Stick with that. You got good material there, Anna. Stick with that.
Next, we go to Aaron Riali, who says the last week and a half of accomplishments has been amazing. But if Trump doesn't get a good portion of these executive orders into law before the midterms, we'll be in for a world of hurt if and when the left regains the White House.
So
I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
It might be that way. But listen, when Steve talks about a king, I'll let him flush out in full where he thinks that might go. But listen, you keep acting like there's citizens out here who really take this thing seriously. I've tried to remind you in every way I can think of that that's just simply not true. There's power and there's results. Mm-hmm. And they're not particularly concerned on their level of involvement on it on any given day, other than pulling that lever on election day. I don't want it to be true, but if he produces all manner of results and then his successor gets voted in again and again and again, Stephen Mai's adult life for a while now has been no budgets, executive orders. We haven't been doing a representative republic for a long time, man. And we might not again. And I don't think that will be a good thing no matter what. But I don't think what you're saying has to happen and not have good results. If he produces good results that the people like, it can be executive order for EVs.
I agree with that. To be as fair as possible, I'll buy, even though I agree with everything you said, I will buy Aaron's premise or suggestion from an opposite premise, which is that if we don't get these things into law at the statute level, then we are looking at exactly what you just described, which is with every single election cycle now, our rights and privileges are just wholly and totally reinterpreted and reimagined and realigned every single cycle to cycle. And I can promise you that I'm not sure how long-term of an arrangement that is.
I don't disagree.
Okay. I mean, in terms of any form of e pluribus unum for a society, to have an existential stake every single time there's a vote, sooner or later, those tensions that energy has to go somewhere else. You see what I'm saying? And so it's possible that Aaron was speaking to it from that angle. So I'll buy, but taking his premise in the opposite direction, I agree with everything you said too. That this is likely to be our existence for the time being. It is going to be cycle to cycle. A series of red Caesars will get elected to counteract the total state, and then the total state will get elected to counteract the red Caesars, and back and forth we go. That's the best we can do in a godless society. Constitutional republic cannot happen in a godless society.
And I think that's what Trump has figured out. Why do you think he's just like all in? Because I'm going to maximize the results on this thing, and you're going to look at it like most people are like, I really don't care how it happened. Mm-hmm. My life's a lot better.
Next, we go to Throft of Spoons, who says Carolyn Levitt wearing that cross so prominently in the opening presser was as awesome as any of the executive orders, maybe not as immediately impactful, but just as awesome.
I'll buy only if
the juxtaposition between her and Karine Jean-Pierre.
I mean,
see, that was happened no matter what. She could have.
Holy cow!
One, she's actually good at this.
Yeah.
Two, she's not. We all know why Karine Jean-Pierre was hired.
She didn't have to be good at this.
No.
She checked the DEI box.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the juxtaposition there is just incredible.
I
a lot of things are with this administration to the last one.
Which is why she could have worn a toga, so it doesn't really matter. But as long as that cross is authentic, like I don't know enough. I hope she's wearing that on the regular. And
she's followed me on X for a long time,
yeah.
but I don't know her at all. But yeah, I agree with both of your analyses.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. If it's not, let me tell you, if it's not for real, the one place you don't want to wear a cross as just a mascot emblem display is in the White House briefing room with that pressure on you every single day. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if there's ever a place where worldview is destiny, it's in a setting like that, right? Yeah.
Dacian memes for pumpkin spiced queens. Buy, sell, or hold this meme. I can't remember what the original name of this meme is, but it's J.D. Vance's face on the old timey colonial guy saying, "Margaret, I careth not." So
I'm gonna sell. It's a cute thing, but I just think I don't care, Margaret. I think in that particular vernacular, it speaks to this moment in the zeitgeist, and I wouldn't edit it whatsoever. I wouldn't add, I wouldn't subtract. I would just make that a mantra. Even though I like this, it's cheeky. I like it, but I think I don't care, Margaret just kind of needs to kind of stand on its own.
I am selling. I agree that we should keep the language the way Steve talked about, but the picture, the better picture, and this has been around for a long time in other contexts, but it's from the movie Kingdom of Heaven. It's King Leopold, the leper king, when he's always wearing that mask and he's holding his hand up and wearing his robes to stop. And now somebody put Vance's face on. That's the perfect picture that goes with this.
Live Free says, if God is not welcome in the public school system, neither is my child. His buy, sell, or hold submission is this: if parents had responded with the above statement when the Bible and prayer was removed from government schools, at least 80% of the problems we face today wouldn't even exist.
I will buy. Yeah. I don't know, the percentage is high maybe, but I think the premise is pretty sound. So I will buy. I mean, this is essentially what Luther wrote about kind of at the dawn of notions of public education in Germany at the time. It's a great advent, but without the word of God, you could introduce the children to the very gates of hell, I think, or something close to that is what he said. So I'm not sure that 80% number might be a little maximalist, a little aggressive, but your premise, I think, is very sound, which is why they took all that stuff out first so that they could then put the new religion in. Yeah. Again, there is no such thing as a secular realm. This was the intention the entire time. And they, by the way, I'm not talking about Democrats or liberals or even Marxists. I'm talking about demons, the beings that refer to themselves as they. Okay, the ones that are really behind the scenes, advocating these sorts of things and orchestrating these sorts of schemes and constructs. This was their plan all along.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not so much just this issue. I mean, the school and education issue is unique in that they want access and they believe that they have a claim and possession ownership of your children, which is a problem in and of itself. But it's not so much this issue that's unique about this statement, so much as it is, if people had responded with the above statement, God is not welcome in the public school systems, neither is my child. If people responded to that, it would have shown what kind of people we were, that we had the volition to act upon our actual principles. And so, therefore, we have the volition to do what? Act on other things as well, other issues.
Right on.
Next, we go to Timothy Stevens. Consequences must be the watchword of this administration. The GOP's historical spinelessness has presented no disincentives towards lawless behavior, which is why the left continues to do what it always does, whatever it wants. Firing is not enough. There must be prison. I've chose this buy, sell, or hold. Are we taking our eye off the ball so far 1 week into the Trump administration? Because there have been a lot of people who have gotten fired. Yeah, we need to demand more.
I mean, I'm not in a place to be blackpilling right now. If anything, you've got to hold me back from, singing psalms. Okay, right now. But I do agree that without punitive accountability, we're going to get more of this. Now, the question becomes, what is the form of punitive accountability? Keep also in mind, much of the cabinet that would enact the policies that you want from a president with his administration aren't even in place yet. Okay? I mean, it's January 29th. All right? So, for example, the place where, frankly, almost everybody that tunes into the show, I would imagine, thinks there needs to be either the most accountability or second most after DOJ would be the healthcare bureaucracy, correct?
Yeah.
After COVID and everything else. Well, those people aren't even in power yet. RFK is just the first. We still have Francis Collins. We still have Jay Bhattacharya taking over Francis Collins at NIH. We still have Dr. Marty Makary taking over at FDA. We still have Kurt Weldon taking over Anthony Fauci's job. So, I mean, there's or maybe it's CDC. There's a long way to go here. But I agree with your premise, so I'll buy.
Yeah, I'll buy. I'll sell. Like that. We with Aaron's rephrasing. Are we taking our eye off the ball already? No, I don't. No, even like Democrats are like, why aren't you changing things in a week's time? Well, you crapped the bed for 4 years. Let's not let the man work a little bit.
The sad hedgehog says, buy, sell, or hold. If Trump maintains his current momentum and energy, he won't just be setting the tone for an excellent term, but the foundation for 12 to 16 years of prosperity or an even longer generational change, undoing a lot of the damage done over the past 20 to 50 years. I would buy, and I would say at the very least, this is on the table, whereas 3 months ago, it absolutely was not.
This is what I was talking about before. I mean, you can worry about the laws being passed. I want those laws to be passed too. But right now, he is fundamentally rewiring people's sense of what reality can be on multiple levels. The press, you see that picture, the whole thing with the swinging youngsters who like it's hip to to live this way again.
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson of the past. Sorry to interrupt, Todd, but the biggest lesson of the past week: you don't have to accept losers and eunuchs for your leaders.
Preach.
You do not have to accept that. You can win. You can win. You can wield power righteously and decisively.
And it can be fun.
Preach. I buy, because this is kind of restating what I've already said, which is the opportunity that Trump has before him is to do to the Democrats and the left nationally as much as you can. There's too much of the country right now that is just balkanized and given over, Romans 1 style, okay? But as much as you can, do to the country what governors like Kim Reynolds in Iowa and Ron DeSantis in Florida did to the Democratic Party there. By showing that with good governance, actually governing on the stuff shows like this talk about makes people's lives better. And then a lot of people who aren't personally vested in total state, Marxism as a religion were like, that's all I care about. My life's better. Cool. We'll re-elect you by 20 points. Okay. That's the opportunity here at hand. However, so I'll buy. However, that also means the opportunity at hand can go in the opposite direction too. If we blow this moment, I don't blow the moment. Let me just say that. Just don't do it.
Next up, we go to Trevor. China is in the position of Cold War USSR. It mostly has the capacity to copy the technology from others, and its own ability to innovate is mostly a bluff.
Okay, so I just think, what era of Cold War sounds like maybe you're our age. So if we're talking 1980s era of Cold War USSR, where we ended up finding out that by the mid 80s Reagan had bankrupted them so bad that these May Day parades that Leonid Brezhnev is presiding over on his deathbed are basically paper mache tanks, okay, then I agree with that. Okay, if that's kind of what you're alluding to, then I agree with that to a certain extent, and because they don't have the landmass, they don't have the foreign. They do have a massive landmass, but I meant they don't have the foreign conquests that the old Soviet Union had. So I don't think it's a 1-to-1. I don't. So I think I'll buy.
I'm absolutely selling. It is a different world in terms of technology, the internet, AI. You can't. China, because they realized that there was this guy that was suddenly messing with their brain with tariffs, lost their mind and decided to stop everything and reset the board by giving us all COVID. That just happened.
Yeah, that's a good answer too.
Okay. This is no. That's not empty threats. They just won on that front. They paralyzed all of us. We got more stupid than we've ever been before. This is what Steve's talking about. Don't blow it. We have shown the capacity in very recent memory to blow it big time because China knew ourselves better than we did.
I'm going to change my answer to his. His is definitely superior to mine. So I'm changing it to Todd's.
Next, we go to Andrew Hansen. By the end of his Philadelphia career, the Giants letting Saquon Barkley walk will rival the Red Sox selling Babe Ruth to the Yankees for worst sports management decisions of all time.
Let's not be too smart by half.
Not even. Dude, listen, Saquon Barkley is a great player, Hall of Famer. He's also good at next year. He's going to be a 28, 29-year-old running back. And he's literally one injury away from never being anything close to what we remember. He doesn't have the indelible impact on the American psyche that Babe Ruth had. It's just no. That's no slam on Saquon Barkley, man. But no, Babe Ruth was transcendent. No.
You asked me earlier in the show, why do we do this? Guys, sports bro. Paralyzing or analyzing is paralyzing. That's my Beth Keith Jackson. You can do it better. Guys, just watch the games.
Analyzing is paralyzing. Yes.
This is wrong.
Yeah.
If you take that different than Babe Ruth, right? That's almost always wrong. When is a Babe Ruth comparison ever right?
Babe Ruth was literally the most famous, popular person in America after George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Like in the history of the country up until that point in time. It's just not the same. And that's no slam at Saquon Barkley, man. I mean, the guy is next level, but it's not the same.
He looks like a video game out there right now.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he does. But it's not the same.
One of the best plays I've ever seen is that spin,
jump backwards.
Backwards.
Yeah,
that was incredible.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah.
Mr. Excuse Me says, Eagles stomp all over the Chiefs due to the officiating of the AFC Championship games. The Super Bowl has the lowest viewership on record. Buy, sell, or hold those two separate propositions.
I'll sell because we just had 52 million people watch the Chiefs.
The Chiefs, game. The AFC Championship game was the second most viewed non-Super Bowl NFL game in history.
Yeah, I'm a data guy. I always go back to the Bible or the data, and the data shows 52 million people watch the Chiefs-Bills game. So that being said, I do like the Eagles in the game. I think the Chiefs' run defense is vulnerable. And I think you saw Jalen Hurts' knee is feeling better. And I think I think these are the two best defenses. And I do think the Eagle in the league, and I think the Eagles can play some keep away with the way they run the football.
Yeah, I'm selling and selling.
Plus, I'm just going to bet against a team winning 3 in a row because no one's ever done it. That's why I would just bet against someone doing it.
P. Smitty is next. Aaron, tell the boss man he needs to shut up and let the guest speak. I just took this just to be an ass. And then I saw there were like 2 or 3 other submissions along these lines.
You know, what's funny is I get a few of these every week. And so just so you know, I try to be self-aware. And going back to Anna will tell you, there's a couple times I've had Anna, hey, go back and listen to this interview and tell me how long did I talk and how long did the guest talk. So, and there's never been a time she's come back to me that I dominated the conversation over the guest. I think certainly I have it. There's usually a time or two where I feel like I really need to explain a question and why I'm asking it, and that may get too wordy. So I'll confess to that sin. But I mean, I try to make sure the guests get a chance to talk, and I even try to hold myself accountable to that end. So,
well, the real way to tell if this is true or not is listen to the answer to the question. And whether it's long or not, is the person asking interested, engaged? That's a great question. Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying this conversation. I mean, I think you all know the answer to that. Our guests are fantastic and they come back. So I don't think this is really complicated.
Okay.
Next, we go to Sheepdog for God. Has this image of breakfast with Todd. It looks like a bowl of screw porridge, a cup of coffee nails, and I'm not sure what's in that other bowl. And of course, the chair is a chair of nails. That's breakfast with Todd, buy, sell, or hold.
I mean, it's self-induced stigmata. That's as Catholic of a breakfast as you're going to get, so I will buy.
Self-induced stigmata.
So the chair is good, but no, this is important. You know, there's coffee, there's vinegar, there needs to be a lot of protein, eggs, sausage, butter, toast. You know, that's no.
But the chair is good.
Chair's good.
The chair is good. Yeah. So well done on that. Yes.
Next, we go to Bob Kroll, Mount Rushmore of Bill Murray movies, Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, Meatballs, and Caddyshack.
I mean, I'm a yes on all of them. A lot of people put Scrooged there, but then you'd have to take one off. Maybe take Meatballs off and put Scrooged on there, maybe. Or is there another one? Stripes maybe goes instead of Meatballs. I think Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, I should say, and Caddyshack are automatics. We agree on those three.
Yes. Sure.
So the debate is over the fourth. Does Stripes go there? Does what else did I mention a minute ago? I forgot that I said could go there. Scrooged. Does Scrooge go there? Does Stripes go there? Is there? And it feels like I'm missing another obvious one.
We must be. But a good list.
Yeah, overall.
Yeah, overall, I'll buy it, sure.
Now, this is an interesting one. Brutus Maximus has this, the top 10 conspiracy theories of the Trump era that, as of last night, have now been proven correct. Number 10, Obama, Hillary, and the deep state ran a coup against Trump.
Yep.
Buy.
Number 9, UFOs, UAPs exist.
I mean, the Pentagon is saying they do. So they're not saying they're extraterrestrial, but they're saying they exist, so I'll buy.
Sell.
Number 8, the FBI had undercover instigators at J6 riots.
Buy. Yeah.
Number 7, Hunter Biden's laptop and Ashley Biden's diary are both real. That's
that's incontrovertible.
Yes.
Yep.
Number 6, elites and Hollywood. Can we go back to that one as well? Let's back up 10 years. Hunter Biden's laptop, Ashley Biden's diary. Tell yourself 10 years ago that Joe Biden or any prominent Democrat would have a son with a laptop like that and a daughter with a diary like that. And it's tragic, the diary. Tell yourself that 10 years ago, you would have said what? I would have said, that's some really poopy right-wing propaganda you got going there.
Yeah.
No way that's real.
And yet it is.
Number 6, elites and Hollywood have a sex trafficking and blackmail problem.
I think that's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Number 5, Joe Biden was dementia-riddled his entire presidency.
Incontrovertible. Yep.
Number 4, 2020 presidential election was stolen.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's incontrovertible, but okay.
I think it's incontrovertible that it was rigged uniquely.
Yes.
Uniquely rigged.
Fortified even.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 3, COVID-19 jabs are not safe and effective.
Incontrovertible.
And ivermectin works.
Incontrovertible. Yep.
Number 2, COVID-19 came from a Chinese biolab.
Incontrovertible.
Correct.
The only debate is what was the point or purpose of the leaking. Yep.
And number 1, Michigan cheated.
I just looked. Yeah. Correct.
Honorable mention, social media censorship of conservatives pushed by the deep state. That's also uncontroversial.
That is a great list. I'll buy. I just love the whole way the list is laid out, and I love the way I love the bucknut through the jab in there right at the end. Brutus Maximus. I love the whole thing. I'll buy. Loved it all. Thank you. Great. That's a good one to end it on.
Yeah, we've got more for the overtime.
All right, great. So we'll get to those today for subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. If you want to become one, go there now, so you don't miss today's overtime or any of the other exclusive content we do here at The Blaze. blazetv.com/Deace. Again, that's blazetv.com/Deace. The prophet of woe and lamentation is next. Stay tuned. Well, before we talk to Daniel, let's talk about something I know Daniel will want to talk about, and that is my underwear, provided by our friends. I'm trying to do to Daniel what I do to you, Todd. Todd, your thoughts. My underwear, Todd, your thoughts.
I think all of America is equal. It's not just a mere Daniel issue. Everybody's on the edge of their seat right now.
Our friends at Undertack are responsible for the underwear that I wear right now. They're ultra comfortable boxer briefs to the American-made battle weaved merino socks. You're going to feel the difference. They've got great hoodies, t-shirts, rugged enough for anything, comfortable enough for every single day as well. They use premium materials that offer 50% more moisture wicking than cotton. Undertack is a phenomenal underwear company designed for and tested by an elite special forces team in Africa's harshest conditions. Now, you can get access to what they wore as well. Plus, a portion of the profits support veteran-run organizations fighting human trafficking. So it's not just a great product, but a great cause. Now it's a no-brainer. So go to undertac.com, TAC, undertac.com. Use code Steve20, and you get 20% off site-wide if you do. That's code Steve20 to get 20% off site-wide when you go to undertac.com. That's undertac.com. Use the code Steve20 to get 20% off site-wide. And now we bring in the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Steve, speaking of underwear, I just got to say, we were all really happy that the Florida Capitol is in like a tiny hick town, because otherwise that Grindr app would be blowing up like crazy. But, there aren't that many people there, so I don't think they'll be needing extra underwear.
He sees your underwear and raises you.
Indeed. Well, let's start there. I did my opening monologue on what's going on in the Florida legislature right now, and pointing out that the meta dynamic here is you've got a group of Florida Republicans who have not wanted to do many of the things Ron DeSantis made them do the last few years. But they felt like they had to do him because he had the power, he had the popularity. Now they kind of want to usher him into lame duck status ASAP and kind of wish fulfillment into existence. Just treat him like that and hope that that's what occurs. He's, of course, fighting back and pushing back. And I made the point to the audience yesterday, Daniel, that if Trump is any modicum of unsuccessful this first year, if we lose the midterm next year, these exact same forces in Washington, D.C. are going to call the first Wednesday in November of 26. They'll treat Trump like a lame duck. They will try to nuke J.D. Vance 28 from orbit if they can. Okay, so that we never have to do any of this kind of stuff. I have any of these talking points and executive orders banning tranny surgeries or anything ever again. All right, this is the dog returning to its own vomit. That's kind of what I laid out for the audience yesterday, but I want to give you your shot at it now because I know you've got a ton to say about what's happening in Florida.
Steve, I mentioned on my show, we all saw these images of Hamas coming out of their plain clothes, the civilian clothes, and all of a sudden, you thought they were gone, and then they take over Gaza. That's what it reminded me of watching these guys. It was like, where in the world did this come out of? And the answer is they were always there. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you don't stop believing in cheap labor overnight. There's a reason why an issue like organized crime, which illegal immigration is out in the open, you can't not solve it. It's pretty easy. If you're here illegally in perpetuity, you can't really live here unless you have political protection. And they do, and they have it in both parties, and they've always resented it. They've always resented him. And they started off the freshman orientation a couple weeks ago, just even before this whole blow up. You're a separate branch of government. We're not gonna do everything he tells us to do. So this is a warning, but it's worse than it's ever been, Steve, because we're a victim of our own success. I want your audience to think about this. A lot of ideas that you and I have put out there over the last 15 years. On the one hand, the good news is even mainstream Republicans are talking about it. Our issues have become mainstream now, but that's also a double-edged sword, because what they do is they talk our issues to death and then subvert them. So they didn't come out and say, hey, we're going to strip the governor of his authority to enforce immigration law and give it to the guy who opposes immigration enforcement. They said, we're doing the toughest law ever, and look at this. And they put out all their graphics, and they name it the Trump Act. Okay? So they run on our issues. They govern on our issues aesthetically, and then knife us in the back. Now, I've seen these plays forever. They've been doing this forever. But I think what's unique here is I don't think we've ever had a governor that has led like this in our lifetime and then used that leadership to take a state that he won by 0.3 of a point and wins it by 19, gives them a super majority in what was a 50-50 state, and then they take it and still do that.
Right.
Because if they're doing it there, Steve, let's extrapolate out. And
they'll do it everywhere. They'll do it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see Texas, they handed the speakership essentially to a guy working with Democrats.
If the Republican Party will not take yes for an answer and accept successes and as a baseline of a new reality in Florida, then a state that just voted for Obama twice, they won't do it anywhere. Yes.
And Steve, one of the things you often say is that the only people who hate us more than the Democrats or Republicans. What we watched this week is that they worked overtime to subvert their people. I mean, it's like, I often say that, I was about to say, giving immigration authority to the ag commissioner that is not even in control of highway patrol and the law enforcement and the state guard. That's retarded. And then I was like, that's not retarded. That's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
It's devious.
It's pretty cunning.
Insidious.
Yes.
But it's not. I was like, man, I was impressed. Like, I like thinking of creative legislative ideas. I never thought of that one. That was really good. I mean, these guys are so doggone good. They wrote it in the way that it sounds like an enforcement bill, and it perfectly ensures that you can't do anything. And then they slap on it, death penalty to illegal alien child molesters, which A, is a straw man, and B, it's already current law for everyone.
Right. Because DeSantis signed into law already the death penalty for child sex offender, for child rapists. He already signed that into law. Correct. Where's this go ultimately? Because he's already defeated the Democratic Party in Florida, but he doesn't have the benefit now of, I've got an election coming up and the leverage of the people behind me. Okay. So can he, although he could go to the mattresses to get someone that is an extension of his administration as a successor into that position. But there's going to be lots of people that want that position that are from other factions, like Byron Donalds, for example, and is ranked has a very high place in Trump world. So what's the strategy for him now moving forward, do you think?
Look, a lot of this is obviously going to depend on Trump. But for now, it's a matter of, what do I always say federally? And I've said this in the first term. Veto pen and bully pulpit. Veto pen and bully pulpit. And what I just saw right before I got on here, he had 4 hours worth of press conferences. I've never seen someone lace into their own party the way he did. I mean, he just called them out by name. Like, how many of you even know who the ag commissioner is? And he starts talking about all his voting record. And then he goes into the issues, chapter and verse. He has an ICE guy there. He has a highway patrol guy there. I mean, just completely owns them. And then says like, hey, you could go to the right of me if you want, but you're not going to the left of me. And I'm going to veto this. And, I think that is going to create an environment for primaries now. People are watching. Mm-hmm. Nobody has ever followed a state legislative session like this. And B, I think it's also a blueprint for Trump. Bully pulpit, veto pen. Bully pulpit, veto pen. And, we'll hear, the Rhino Caucus wants to keep the Green New Deal. I mean, really? Electric vehicles? We're gonna keep that? I mean, that's what needs to happen, because one of my concerns is Trump is batting 1,000 with the executive orders. But, some of them, you have the court screwing with them, the judicial supremacism issue. Some of them, they're not going to be enduring. Then you have the congressional stuff. Okay, and then Democrats will come back. All we're left with that's going to be permanent is the states where Democrats aren't there, but Republicans are playing stand-in. That's where Trump really needs to up his game with some of these endorsements. And Steve, I would be remiss if, I don't know if you've mentioned this to your audience, but, just everything looks really good now. But you saw in your home state, in the eastern part of the state, there was a 25-point swing to Democrats. Mm-hmm. They flipped a legislative seat.
You reach a saturation point. The balkanization goes against you the other way. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And they're going to come back. And also, we already know our voters are not motivated to turn out for anyone but Trump, and the Republican Party is not giving that to them.
Correct.
So if that is a harbinger, it's still early.
Yeah.
They will get slaughtered in the midterms. And then what are you left with? So what we need to do now is build enduring victories. And the worst thing we could have is in the states that we're going to need for our sanctuary when Trump is gone to now become really do what Democrats couldn't do on their own, but Republicans do for them. The party has not changed, and we need to change them.
Last thing I want to ask you about RFK Jr.'s hearing today. I'm sure you've been following it in real time. You got your own show to do, this show to do, and everything else. It just concluded, as a matter of fact. But what instead of asking you for specifics, I'm sure you'll have time later today to get into the individual testimony. How about the magnitude of just this particular moment? The fact that this hearing is taking place and ultimately what you think his appointment, and then the rest of those folks, like a Jay Bhattacharya, for example, what that could mean on the heels of the work that you and I have done on this topic the last few years, culminating with Rise of the Fourth Reich.
Well, it's both a political realignment and also, in my view, it's the most pro-life issue. I've said this all along. I mean, everyone is dying. Look, I just have a neighbor. I have a neighbor that dropped dead at 45 years old, a woman with a husband, 3 kids, 10-year-old kid. I had a friend. I had a former small group,
in our old small group. Very healthy man was in our small group, teaching at my kid's school at Des Moines Christian. Just collapsed one day and finds out he's got stage 4 cancer. He just passed away yesterday.
Yep. And we never could prove exactly what did each thing, but I know you have in your congregation, my congregation, death is a very big thing. People come together, you get email notices, so you could see in a small pool of people, this has never happened. Mm-hmm. What has happened is out of control. And we need to get to the bottom of this. And there's the vaccines, but there's multiple things. So number one, this is a pro-life issue. All right, I want to make that very clear. Because I'm upset about, abortion being jettisoned or pro-life being jettisoned from the party like the next person. But let's not deny that this is not a pro-life issue either. But number two, this is a realignment. That Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, you saw that exchange with her, yep. They are utter frauds. This whole thing, I hate the corporations. They love the corporations yep. that are absolved of liability, funded, marketed by the government, and then could force something into your body. Talk about that as corporate populism. So this is a perfect opportunity to finally shed that old skin of the Republicans and realign, and I think really get a super majority of the public against the Democrats on this issue, and again, save some lives.
Amen. Very well said. Good to see you, brother. Thank you.
See you next week. Take care.
You bet. We'll see you next week. Daniel, brought to you by our friends over at Real Estate Agents I Trust. If you are now like, okay, new sheriff in town, new markets, optimism, let's go ahead and take advantage of this situation. We've had such a sluggish housing market for years now. And you're like, hey, let's go for it. Great. Make sure you've got an agent that you can trust to walk you through that process. A lot of things have happened and changed in the last few years when it comes to real estate and buying and selling a house. Where would you find that agent? Well, the name kind of says it all. Head over to realestateagentsitrust.com. We'll hook you up with an agent that we have fully vetted. Otherwise, we wouldn't recommend them to you. We wouldn't list them in the database there. And then a lot of times, they're going to also be Blaze aficionados and fans like you. So you guys have a common value system in place as well. All right. So whether you're trying to get across town or you're trying to get across the country, wherever you want to go, we will help you get an agent that will take you where you ultimately need to be, and that's across the finish line with a satisfactory outcome for both sides. All right, go to realestateagentsitrust.com to get your agent you can trust. Get that agent at realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, 3-minute warning here, gentlemen. Final thoughts either on what Daniel and I discussed or today's show.
I've mentioned this before, but the one and only time Daniel and I have sat down and broke bread in person, we privately talked about this issue. And he said to me, not in confidence or anything, he just said, yeah, I was so blind on this vaccine issue pre-COVID. It's something I've actually repented of. And that we've defaulted on this as Western civilization, too smart by half. We've made a false god of this thing. Daniel putting it that way is so important because we need to look this thing in the eye and see, just like Steve said, how much, not reason we've given it, how much faith and undue faith we've given it.
Amen. Yeah. Going back to the beginning of the show, everything boils down to, every fight that you see, whether it's fake or not, it boils down to an issue of worldview. And man, talking about what's going on in the Florida legislature right now, the absolute tip of the cap that you just heard Daniel give to the conniving, cynical branch of the Republican Party for writing a bill that eloquently sounds on the surface like it is a tiger, but in effect does nothing. It's a lemming, basically. That's a worldview issue as well. It's absolutely a worldview issue. These people are telling you, these authors are telling you what they think about you, what they think about themselves, and what their priorities really are. And like we talked about yesterday, those types of people, Republicans, these are supposed to be your friends. These are supposed to be your representatives. These are people who are supposed to share your worldview, a worldview, at least something adjacent to something like this show. They hate you, and they can't wait back. They cannot wait to get back to screwing you over. So, wise as serpents, innocent as doves, keep your eye on the ball. All of the catchphrases you want to throw at this. But again, we have to remain vigilant during these years, because we're just a couple of leaders here and there, maybe in Iowa on some issues, in Florida on a lot of issues, now in the White House on pretty much every issue. Just a few leaders away from those types of instincts taking back over en masse again, because they're already there. They never went away.
Absolutely. And the biggest issue we have, frankly, is personnel. And much of that personnel is still there. Many of the same people are still holding seats in Congress. Many of the people are still holding seats in the Senate. Many of the same people are still in power in your individual states. So we've got a mandate right now, and therefore the ability to put pressure on them that they've not felt in recent memory. We have to take full advantage of it right now. All right, we're going to stick around and finish up Buy, Sell, or Hold for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.